Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Rich Sports Talk. We have breaking news. The Jets offseason is starting with a bang. So, again, we knew this would be a massive offseason. There would be a lot of changes, but I did not see this coming. But I do think that the Jets have made quite the move. They have traded Jermaine Johnson, who will reunite in Tennessee with Robert Saleh. And in return, the Jets will get a mountain of a man in T Vondre Sweat, a 366-pound nose tackle. There is a lot to discuss, how this benefits both teams, how this impacts the offseason, how this impacts the draft, and the defense going forward. We'll get to all that and more in this episode. If you're new to the channel, hit that like. If you want to get your comments in, again, get them in at any time. Super chat to jump to the front of the line, or if you want to make a nice donation to the channel. And, of course, you can check us out wherever podcasts are available. So my initial thoughts are this. I think that this is a great trade for both parties. And this is very rare in the National Football League. And I know as fan bases, you quote, you want to win the trade. You want to fleece the other team. You want to come out of it feeling like with Jamal Adams that the Jets got a lot of draft capital, or the Sauce Gardner trade, 2 first-round picks and a receiver. But this was a very nice move. And I do think that this is showing the strength of Darren Muji, and we'll see how he does in the draft, but he is a very good trader. He has made a lot of moves in the trade market, and I think this is a very smart one. And I don't think this is the last trade we'll see with the Jets this offseason. In terms of Jermaine, I think that, again, it's sad that Jermaine is leaving. He was a great Jet. He was an all-around great personality. And look, if you're a Tennessee Titan fan tuning into this channel, wanting to get the thoughts from a Jets fan on what you're getting for Jermaine Johnson, this is what I will say. You are getting a class act. You're getting a great human being, someone that's going to be a leader of your defense, someone that's going to be a great locker room presence and a great fit with Robert Saleh. And look, Robert Saleh, of course, drafted him. They traded up to get him in the first round as a part of that 2022 draft class, which is now basically cut in half with the trades of Sauce and Jermaine Johnson. I think that he's going to fit this defense for Tennessee very well. And basically, this is something that I thought that Aaron Glenn should have done last season, which is getting a body in your room that understands your defense, that understands the personnel, that understands the language, that understands what you're trying to accomplish on that defensive side. So for Tennessee, I think they get a great player. Meanwhile, look at the Jets. And I know that they'll say they're not going to just a 4-3, just a 3-4. They're looking for multiple fronts, but it's very clear. They're going to be looking to do a majority of this defense in the 3-4. You get Sweat, who's a massive nose tackle at 366. You pair him with Juwan Briggs on the inside, maybe with a 4-down lineman. That's still over 600 pounds of humanity that you're going to have to try to run the ball on. Look, an ascending player's got a little bit of a pass rush bump, not an elite pass rusher by any metric, but it has shown some plus ability there, can get up the field. But you look 24 years old, 2 years under contract, saves the Jets $13.4 million in cap space, so they'll have $90 million in cap space before moving on from Fields, which I still think they will do. You look, since 2024, he's the 8th ranked PFF defensive tackle against the run, and last year was 4th highest run grade in the NFL for interior defensive linemen. I mean, this is someone that's going to plug the run. It's going to be very difficult to move, and I like this move for the Jets. I think it fits the 3-4. I'm curious to see how it work with Carl Dunbar. This is clearly someone that basically will fit this 3-4 really well. And look, this is another move that I really like with Darren Muji, getting an NFL body in this room, someone that has tape, someone that's proven that they can do it, and someone that is a reasonable contract. That's one of the reasons I like the Juwan Briggs contract. Like, they're getting players at good cap numbers and the ability to save money. And it also tells me they're going to the 3-4, because as much as they say we want multiple fronts, and I get it, there's going to be multiple fronts. If you're really going to be that multiple, I don't think you trade Jermaine Johnson, who's a 4-3 end. And really, when you look at this defense, when you looked at the 2 defensive ends that they had with Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson, the question was, who could make the transition? Now, I think a 3-4 will fit Will McDonald very well, coming off the edge, smaller. He was a smaller edge to begin with, but I think as an outside linebacker, I think he'll be fine. And I think that the Jets have made the decision. I've said this. They're going to have to make the decision on Jermaine and Will McDonald, because Will McDonald, they're going to exercise the 5th-year option. but Jermaine's going to his 5th-year option. Do you give him an extension after this season? And it's clear that the Jets were also thinking about moving Jermaine this past season. I mean, reports from Connor Hughes that San Francisco, Robert Saleh wanted him back for a 3rd-round pick. The Jets wanted 2. Now in the offseason, they get a massive ascending player at 24 years old, 2 years of contract control, which I think is very important. And I think with Jermaine, it was unfortunately a square peg round hole. And I think Aaron Glenn, if you want to see if he's learning lessons, the big thing is he's trying to get players that fit his scheme. I think last year he thought he can make those square pegs in the round hole with Saleh's old layover of the defense work. It's clear that didn't happen. Do I love trading Jermaine, who I think still has good ball ahead of him and the year off the Achilles? Again, I'm rooting for Jermaine. If Jermaine goes out and has 8 to 10 sacks and people are rolling their eyes, look, if T Vondre Sweat stops the run, is a really good impact defensive player, and I'm not saying on the stat sheet, but he eats up blocks. He allows other people, like a Will McDonald, like if they drafted Arvell Reese or David Bailey, allows them space to attack and to work, then that's still an impact player. But I'm rooting for Jermaine. I know a lot of Jet fans hate it when players go off and do well other places. And look, I think for Jermaine, this is a perfect situation. Former coach, the scheme he fits in well. But I also think that this is very important as well. When I look at how the Jets are going to improve this roster, obviously we talk free agency, obviously we talk the draft, but one thing that I think has been ignored a lot by Jets media is the trade market. And just think about this. Since last season, I mean, it's basically been a year since Darren Muji's taken this job as the GM. The Jets have made 8 trades. Think about this. In these last 12 months, the Jets have traded Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, Jermaine Johnson, Michael Carter the second, a 6th-round pick, and 3 7th-round picks, and have acquired T Vondre Sweat, Jawan Briggs, Harrison Phillips, Adonai Mitchell, John Mechie, Jarvis Brownlee, Jasir Taylor, Mozzie Smith, 3 first-round picks, and 1 second-round pick. I think that they're going to use a lot of their day 3 assets to try to get players in this league and guys that are under control and guys that they have NFL film of that say, hey, they can play in this league instead of taking dart throws on guys who you're hoping can fit. And one thing that actually benefits the Jets greatly for this is this offseason. What is a key aspect to this offseason? It's the coaching changes, and you're seeing it with this trade. You have Robert Saleh, who has a very particular scheme. He wants guys that can rush the passer. He would prefer defensive tackles that can get up the field, that can impact the passing game. If they're they're not great run stoppers, he can get away with that. But in his scheme, he wants to attack with the front 4, drop 7, play a lot of zone, doesn't want to get fancy with blitzes. He just wants 4 guys that can rush the passer. And you see a guy like T Vondre Sweat, 366 pounds, could work in that defense, especially in the first 2 downs. But it's clear that Robert Saleh wants to remake this defense. He sees Jermaine as a guy that he can plug and play, and we know Jermaine's a 3-down defensive end. And he looks at T Vondre Sweat like, I like the player, young kid, but doesn't fit my scheme. That's important to me because you have 10 new philosophies in the NFL. You have 10 new coaches who are coming into rooms and looking at their teams and looking at their rosters and going, yeah, we have talented players, but do they fit our scheme? We have talented players, but I'm not sure if they fit what I really want to do. And when you look at that all of a sudden opens the door for a team like the Jets that says, hey, if you're going to cut that guy or you're not sure you're going to keep him, we'll give you an additional pick. We'll give you a pick for him so we can have that guy. I think that's very important. And when I look around this league, you look at guys like Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta. Are there guys on that defense he might look to move? Mike LaFleur, are there people on that defense? Joe Brady, Clint Kubiak. We just saw with Saleh. Again, I don't think Harbaugh would necessarily do a deal with the Jets, but maybe there's a piece on that Giants defense that he doesn't necessarily love and that he wants to move off of. So when I look at the NFL, I look at 10 different coaches that might want different pieces, that are looking for different types of personnel. And maybe the Jets either have those personnel or they'll give a pick for a player that doesn't necessarily fit. And this is a player, too, that if you're expecting him to impact the stat quote sheet, I think you might be disappointed. This is a player that's going to impact the run defense. He's going to make it hard to move the football. He's going to allow other people to work free. If he can plug the middle of that field and take up 2 buys on that offensive line, he is doing a good job. And look, let's also not snuff at the fact that this is $13 extra million into the pot for free agency. Maybe this allows them to give a Godfather offer to a Tyler Linderbaum, for example, where they give him like the CJ Mosley contract where the Ravens are like, dude, like, we're not even going to come close. Like, you got to take that offer. Like, if that's the difference between getting a Tyler Linderbaum or getting one of these pieces in free agency, I say go for it. But I also think keep a lookout on the trade market. Like, is there a piece on the Raiders? Now, again, not Max Crosby, but is there a piece on the Raiders that the Jets think fits more of a 3-4 scheme? Is there a player on the Bills? Like, again, I don't think there's going to be much turnover, but maybe Joe Brady tries to move a piece in or out. Jesse Minter for the Ravens. I mean, there's so many different coaches out there that could be looking to move pieces that don't really fit. I think a great example is Quincy Williams. I mean, think about Quincy. They draft him. He's successful early in his career. They change the scheme. They cut him because he doesn't fit. Comes to the Jets where he plays in a scheme where he's a perfect fit, and he becomes a Pro Bowl and earns a massive contract with the Jets. There are players out there, like scheme is such an important thing. Like fit is such important. There's some guys that are scheme proof, but for a lot of guys, and especially like for us, you need to find the right work environment. You need to find the place that makes you successful. And when I look at this situation, I think that you're going to see a lot more trades on this market. I think Muji has shown you he's looking for guys who maybe are first, second, third former picks that maybe have fallen out. Like Mozzie Smith was a great example. Again, didn't play a lot for the Jets last year, but again, was a first-round draft pick. Could he come into camp and compete? And you look at that room all of a sudden, we thought, like, and again, I've done multiple mock drafts. And again, I don't do my sevens until after free agency when I get a clearer picture. But I've been mocking Peter Woods because they need that impact defensive tackle. Now, again, it's not exactly a pass rusher, but with this move, with Sweat, all of a sudden, they have a great run stuffer. Maybe they don't need to use one of those top 44 picks on a defensive tackle. It's a trickle effect. Maybe Jawan Briggs, who, again, we saw had plus pass rush last year, maybe on first down, instead of getting beaten up in the middle as a nose tackle, he's on the defensive edge, setting the edge or taking a play off or two that allows him on a 3rd and long to come back into the middle and be more of a dynamic pass rusher because he's got a little bit more spring in steps, because he doesn't have to play as many reps. There's all this trickle-down effect. Now, again, you look at defensive end, it is a very thin room, or the edge. I'll say edge, especially they're going to the 3-4. I mean, you basically have Will McDonald. I think this basically tells you one of two. They're taking a defensive player at 2, whether it's Ruben Bain, but I think more likely it's going to be Arvell Reese, or it's going to be David Bailey. And the thing which I think also plays with Arvell Reese now all of a sudden is if you're going to a 3-4, maybe he doesn't have to play edge every snap. You can move him to the weak linebacker position for a couple snaps, then move him to the edge and pass rush situation. So it gives the Jets basically a lot more flexibility. And look, it gives them more cap space. You move on from a player that wasn't going to fit in this defense. And a lot of us were speculating how Jermaine was going to fit in this defense, how he was going to make an impact. And also, let's be honest, we were talking about the Achilles all year, but when we got to the end of the season, you're kind of saying, how much of this is the Achilles? How much of this is fit? How much of this is just performance? And look, I think if Jermaine is healthy, he's going to have a nice bounce back year for the Titans. And yes, he's going to get 8 to 10 sacks. And I understand that there's going to be a lot of anger on social media. Oh, of course, the Jets traded another great player. But T Vondre Sweat comes in here and makes an impact, helps in the run game. It allows you to bring in another piece or two of that extra $13.4 million. And also, you don't have to necessarily draft a defensive tackle in the top 44. Maybe they double up on defensive edge. Maybe they go edge at 2 and edge at 33 or 44. They trade back from 33 and get an edge in the middle of the 2nd round. I mean, this gives the Jets flexibility. And more importantly, we've been looking for a plan. One of the biggest critiques against Aaron Glenn and this regime is that they say, trust us, we have a plan. And we as a fan base have been sitting there like, okay, show us. What's the plan? I think the Jets are telling you their plan. They're moving to a 3-4. They want defensive linemen that are bigger, nastier, and that you cannot move. They want to attack from the edges with a 3-4 defense. They're going to look to run the football, what that we've known, and they are going to look to keep Breece Hall. They said it yesterday in the press conference. They'll do everything. If they can't get a deal done, they'll franchise tag him and then try to get an extension. And look, with this extra $13.4 million, if you have to throw an extra $2 to $3 million to keep Breece Hall in a long-term deal, is it worth it? And I would say yes. And this is for a player in Jermaine. As much as I love Jermaine, if he had another poor performance this year, what was his value going to be at the trade deadline on an expiring contract? Would you let him just walk in free agency? What exactly would you get for comp? Instead, you get a guy that's under 25 years old, and a still ascending player, a guy that will be an impact player in the middle of this defense, and a guy who also is on a very controllable and cheap contract that allows you to save $13.4 million in cap. So again, it's tough to see Jermaine go. Again, if you're a Titans fan on this show and you're asking what you're getting an unbelievable dude and an unbelievable leader. But let's get to some of your comments against Super Chat to jump to the front of the line. Again, got to be in there first. Muji Magic is transforming our Jets, and it looks like Reese will be our number one pick. I still want to rule out Bailey, though. Again, Bailey's just such a good pass rusher, man. I just love the tape of that guy. I think it's between the two of them. And the thing with Reese is, Reese, to me, has more of the upside. He's more of an unfinished product. And the one thing I just worry about with this defense is, then the staff is, I'm not sure how much they're going to improve Arvell Reese. I'm not sure how much they're going to emphasize him. And look, Aaron Glenn says his superpower is calling defenses. Well, that superpower, if you draft Arvell Reese, is where are you playing him? You're not going to line him up on edge of every play. You're going to line him up in the middle. Or you're going to line him up on the outside. You got to move him around this defense to get the most out of him, especially year one. And when I look at this defense too, I do think that this allows them. And look, here's the other thing with the draft. And I think there's a great comment in here, which will lead to my point next. I think the Jets are taking the best defensive player that they view at number 2. But as I've been doing this mock draft, I've been coming across this. I truly believe that there are 12 to 13 first-round players. And then you get a lot of borderline good players. And the drop-off is right around 16. And I've seen a lot of mock drafts where people are mocking Mekhi Lemon or one of the receivers to the Jets at 16. I don't think they're getting that far. So now all of a sudden, I think one strategy the Jets have to employ, and if they can fill more holes in the offseason, like now they don't have to worry about defensive tackle necessarily, that they can be a little bit more aggressive. Now, I'm not saying sacrifice the capital for 2027, but if you can turn 1 or 2 of your day 3 picks and jump up 2 or 3 spots to get a player in this draft from 16 going to like 12, 13, or 14, it might be worth it, because then you can then counter with pick 33 and move back from 33 to recoup those assets. And that would be a strategy that I would truly implore in this draft. I would really look into it, just because, again, I look at this board and I'm saying, if you want one of the big 3 receivers, if you want one of these really great prospects, I think you're going to have to trade up, because when I'm getting to a lot of these drafts and mock drafts, when I'm getting to 16, it's a lot of, okay, like Keldrick Falk, maybe, could we talk ourselves into Vega Ione from Penn State? Maybe. Kenyon Sadiq, 16, maybe. Ty Simpson, Casey Conception. Like, if you truly want one of the great players in this draft, I do think you're going to have to jump a couple picks. And here's the thing. It might be good value. Like, let's say, for example, Caleb Downs gets out of the top 10, or Sonny Styles. I really don't think Sonny Styles will, but let's say Caleb Downs gets to pick 11 or 12. Is it worth it for the Jets to get him and walk out of the draft? Like, is it worth it to give up a couple extra picks to get a bona fide player? Like, if we came out of draft night 1 and said the Jets walked away with arguably the best prospect or the most can't miss prospect with Caleb Downs and Arvell Reese or David Bailey. Like if they walked out of the draft with Arvell Reese, who many think is one of, if not the best prospect, or Caleb Downs, who many also think is one of the best prospects, that could work. Or they walk out with Mekhi Lemon. I mean, those are a couple of the different scenarios that I'm looking at. Scotty, I'm a huge Bane fan. This move almost confirming us to be a 3-4, removing him from consideration, at least in my mind, definitely sucks. So you could still look at Bane in the 3-4. I think he's a little bit undersized to be an edge in the 3-4. The thing with the Jets is, again, if they're looking to play a lot of multiple fronts and they think he's good enough to play the edge in a 3-4, and then if they're dropping 4 down linemen, kicking him inside on those packages, that's something. But again, I'm not taking a package player with Ruben Bane at that pick. And look, I understand the frustration. I still think you're going to get a really good player with Bane. The thing with him too is I think Ruben Bane, and I'm not trying to knock him, I think he's going to be a really good NFL player and a really good defensive end. I think he's going to be more in line with a Jermaine Johnson, though. I think he's going to be really good against the run. He's going to get you 8, 10, maybe his best year is 11 or 12 sacks a year. But when you're picking him at number 2, you're kind of going, that's good, but I was hoping for just a little bit more. And Tony, I wouldn't rule this out, Tony. And again, if let's say the Jets get Anzalone, they know they're getting Arvell Reese. They're going to play him a lot middle or move him around. If they can sign another linebacker, trade for another linebacker, I would look that up. And don't forget, too, if Jeff, I'm trying to think, is Jeff, I can't remember, did Jeff Ulbrich get fired in Atlanta? I know he was on the defensive staff last year. Let me look that up. I know, I'm just trying to make sure, like, if he's still on the, yeah, he's still the defensive coordinator. I wasn't sure if they had fired him with the new head coach there, but Atlanta's another place too. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're calling up and look, the Titans as well. Maybe it's another player swap. Like, I'm just looking right now, like that could be a possibility, or for a draft pick. So I wouldn't rule out Jamien Sherwood either. I mean, don't forget, they drafted Jamien Sherwood. They developed him into a player. And in that system, he was a borderline Pro Bowler. So you can't look at it and say it didn't work in Salah's defense. The problem is when he's not in Salah's defense, it looks completely different. And look, I mean, I'm just looking around, like, could like a Jalen Harrell, the defensive end, again, a bit undersized at 247, but could he play standing up on the outside? I mean, it's definitely something. Let's be frank too, like with Sherwood, it hasn't been a great fit with this team. And don't forget, they also sat him this year. They benched him. Would you package 16 and 44 to leap into take Sonny style? So I'm just going to get my chart here really quick just to see the trade value. So I think it depends on how this free agency period go. I think that if you really are looking at it, so let's say Cincy Denver trades out. So let's say Kansas City at number 9. So if you were to go up there, I'm just trying to look. I actually wouldn't be opposed to that. And I know a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, why would you do that? I just feel like if you can get like a Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs, like a true bona fide player, I would do it. And the other thing I would piece, if the Jets basically have 4 picks in the first 2 days of the draft, they still could leave with 4 picks in the first 2 days of the draft by trading 33. I mean, I look at 33, there's 4 teams don't have a first round pick. Panthers. The Panthers throwing in their third round pick, and then a future asset. If the Jets could move down from 33 and get a third round pick, I think that the Jets could definitely do that. And the other thing, too, that we have to keep in mind is the Jets have a plethora of picks on day 3. I mean, one of them is their fourth round pick is pick 30 is 103. So if they want to get back into the back end of the third round, they easily can do that. So that's another way they can recoup an asset. So again, I don't hate that idea. And to be honest, as we get closer, I kind of think that the Jets might have to be a little bit aggressive, and I'd rather have them get one of those pieces. And look, so let me get, would be the highest paid safety in NFL styles would be our Ray Lewis. Again, that's a lot. Yeah. And the other thing too, is it depends. If they go out and sign 2 starting safeties, that's another big thing. And look, maybe they'll trade for safety. I think realistically, when I look at the rookie class, I think I feel confident AZ Thomas can be a starting corner on this team. When I look at Malachi Moore, I think he's more of a spot starter, number 3 safety. And again, that's still good value. It's nice to have that player because you're going to need, there's injuries. There's going to be players you need to step up. And if they're a limited starter for like a couple games, but they don't kill you, I think that is a good option as well. So, and look, I'm seeing trade down from 16 for Ty Simpson. And take Aller in the third. Look, Aller again is going to perform at the combine this week, which I think will be big. I'm of the mindset that the Jets, and again, one of the big things with Ty Simpson now, which has come out, is he was fighting, I think it was a stomach virus at the end of the season. He was down to 190 pounds, so he wasn't playing. And I think people are going to look at that and take that into account. So, but I think with Simpson, you're going to have to take it round 1 because again, in weak quarterback class, we see this all the time. We saw it with Kenny Pickett, EJ Manuel. There's always going to be guys who are drafted because quarterbacks, let's face it, it's hope. And right now, why do the Jets feel so hopeless right now? There's no great plan at quarterback. Even if the Jets drafted Ty Simpson, a lot of this fan base is saying, what are you doing? Wait till 2027. So I understand where a lot of people are coming from and a lot of the frustration with this fan base. But I'm of the mindset that the Jets are going to take someone like a Garrett Nussmeier, either late day 2, early day 3, and hope he maybe develops. I just don't see them with Ty Simpson. Now, again, maybe Ty Simpson wows them. Maybe they fall in love like with Jackson Dart last year. And look, I just get this feeling that with this team, and again, I'm just checking on X right now, and RG3 posted a video from the combine. So at 366, ran a 5.27. I mean, an adjusted 40 time for height and weight is equivalent to a 180-pound DB running a 4.26. Yeah, I mean, if you see VondreSweat Sweat running at you, run, run. And look, I posted in the community page. You can check it out who won the trade. But I really think that this is a really good trade for both teams. I think both teams win this trade. Speaking of Ruben Bain, since he was brought, Ruben Bain's arm length, which has always been has been a topic of debate, 30 7/8. So it is the third shortest since 1999. Nate Williams in 2013 and Son Smith were the only edges with shorter arms. So the T-Rex debate with Ruben Bain will begin now. It is crazy. And the other thing, too, is I look at the quarterbacks, and I brought this up, too. I just get the feeling the Jets are going to trade for a quarterback as well. I I I feel like and again, I think that there's also this jet fatigue from trading players that you fall in love with that are good players. I mean, I just look since 2015. I mean, Leonard Williams traded, Jamal Adams in 2017 traded, Darnold traded, Quinnen traded, Zach Wilson traded, but no one's going to be sorry about that. Jermaine Johnson traded, Sauce traded. I just think that this is a good fit for both teams. And you have now a guy who's signed through this roster 2027. And I just think it was a great trade for both parties. I think both parties get a key piece to what they want. The Jets trying to run a 3-4, get a true nose. And Tennessee, looking to rebuild their culture and their defense, gets a 3-down player on the outside. And, he's been a really solid player. And one of the things I always look at is I look at how fans are reacting. And a lot of Titans fans, it's kind of like when the Jets made the trade for Brownlee earlier, not necessarily thrilled that he's going. It's not like, oh, they pulled off a heist and oh, good riddance. It's, it's just one of those things too, where I look at this team and I look at how they're being built and I'm looking and saying, you know what? I'm okay with that. And you get a true nose tackle, you free up a bunch of money, and now you have $91 million. I mean, don't forget too, like T Vondre Sweat was the 30th overall pick in the draft. I mean, in the 2024 draft. Like, this isn't someone that, was like a 4th round pick or 3rd round. This is still a high draft pick. And I mean, look, when you look at these defenses, especially the 3-4s under Rex Ryan, what was the big key to it? It was a massive man in the middle, whether it was Chris Jenkins, Sione Pua, or Damon Snacks Harrison. Again, they didn't show up on the stat sheet, but they made a huge impact. And when you look at your defensive line coach, who was successful with the 3-4, and the best years that they had was having a mammoth human being in the middle of that defense. And what did the Jets just get? An absolute mammoth human being to be in the middle of that defense. Again, comments, super chat to jump to the front of the line. Let's get to some more of your question on here. All right, Mr. Vaughn, is Sal on his way to getting fired with a crazy trade like this? I love this trade 100%. Let's see. The thought of having, I'm guessing, Bain or Bailey McDonald is scary crazy for offensive lines. I think it's going to be Bailey or Arvell Reese, if I'm honest. I think Bain, especially with the arms, is there. And look, this is also, again, I also watched a little bit of the tape too. The guy's not a bad pass rusher. I mean, he's not just going to clog the middle. Like, he can get up the field a bit too. And I think that's the plan, Mr. Vaughn. I mean, you heard it from Muji. If they don't get a long-term deal, they're going to tag him. And I think part of the reason they're going to tag him is to keep working on a deal. And look, you save $13 million. If an extra, like, let's play a hypothetical. What if an extra $3 million is needed to get Breece across the finish line? Well, now you have an extra 13. You still have 10 on top of that. What if the Jets, I don't know, gave Linderbaum $6 or $7 million a year than the Ravens? You can do that because you freed up this cap space. So again, I also like that Muji too is being aggressive and proactive. And again, well, it's funny because now you have a whole new regime there too with the Titans. So again, I just look at, I just look at the way this was done too. And again, you get Brownlee, who's still on his rookie deal. You get Briggs, who's on a rookie deal. You now get Sweat, who's on a rookie deal. I mean, it's not just the money, but it's the control. Now the Jets don't have to worry about a nose tackle for 2 seasons because they have him under contract. I just look at this team and I think it makes sense. And this is the one thing too. I look at this and I go, do you have someone in charge? And does it feel like there is a plan and that there's competence? And at least with Darren Muji, it feels like there is competence. Because again, this is someone who, I'll remind people, has made 8 trades since coming. And again, he's been here a year. And yes, they traded a lot, but they've acquired 3 first rounders, a second rounder, T Vondre Sweat, who will be this nose tackle for 2 years, Harrison Phillips, who's a great culture guy and will be a leader in this locker room and is a good quality NFL player, Juwan Briggs, who's a defensive tackle that flashed upside last year, especially in the pass rush, A.D. Mitchell, who at least feel will be a rotational receiver at the very worst in this team, John Mechie, who's at least a depth piece for this wide receiver room, Jarvis Brownlee, who we feel is this team's starting slot corner, Jasir Taylor, who again maybe is a backup on this roster, and Maze Smith, who again probably will come in with camp, but was a former first-round pick. So at least there's some there. And even with Maze Smith, I mean, they're telling you what they want. Look at the D tackles they've acquired. They're not acquiring guys that can get up the field. They're getting guys that are just, mongoloids in the middle of that defense with like Maze Smith, who weighs over like 300 pounds. Like these are just big monster dudes that you can't push. And look, like I also feel too that this allows the Jets to be more creative. And I also think too, you're going to see the Jets attack through the trade market. And again, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest videos. And again, I would say too, again, I'm for O-line. I mean, I think you have to look at every possibility. I still think you have to continue to do this. So I think Mooj has won every trade. I think he's done a very good job. I would keep AVT. I've been on the record saying, look, I understand even if it's a multi-year deal, I still think the injuries are a freak injury. The best version of this offensive line is AVT on, and it's another hole you have to plug in. Look, if you have teams that are hoping AVT gets to free agency, it tells you what people view of AVT. And I think AVT is a great player. I still think the best version of the Jets offensive line is with him. And look, then all of a sudden you keep Tippmann at guard. You have Myers at center, but maybe try to upgrade the center position. And look, you can draft someone on day 3 to be a good backup guard. Like I think that I just feel like, again, the Jets have so many holes, just don't create another one. And I would sign AVT. And again, I know Muji, people were looking at saying, well, he said he wants Brees. He's going to do whatever to get Brees back, was kind of ho-hum on the guards. Well, the difference is with Brees, there's control because they have the 2 tags. And I think Muji's comment, he's like, look, either way, I'm keeping Brees because I'm going to have the tag. So I think that's part of it. Part of it, too, with AVT, who knows? Maybe you never know. AVT might just not like the culture, might just want to leave. And look, if that's his choice, that's his choice, even if the Jets offer him more money. So I think if you can get him a good 2 or I would try to give him a 3-year deal that's front-loaded. That would be front-loaded so the Jets could get out of after 2 years. And look, here's the thing. Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn, they understand they're on the hot seat. And Aaron Glenn talked all last summer how much he loved AVT, how important AVT was to this team. If they want to keep their jobs, one of the best solutions is keeping AVT. You keep the fans happy. You have a good offensive lineman. If he's healthy, this offensive line, we talked about how good the offensive line was last year without AVT. Imagine if AVT is out there, if AVT is on the left side next to Olu, and you have Tippmann and you have, Membu just going to town on the right side. I mean, that to me is impressive. And look, this is a former first-round pick. This is a guy that has had unfortunate injury issues. If you were to tell me he had another Achilles, which would have been his second, I would have been more leery, but he had a triceps injury. I mean, it was just a freak injury, and I understand injuries pile up. I understand he's only played in 35 games. I understand all of that, but are you really going to get a better player? Are you really going to do that? I just don't see that happening. I just don't. I really don't. And look, I just think he's too big of a player to lose. And look, AVT is this team's best run blocker, even with Armand Membu. I'm just saying, like, I would not just get rid of a really good player. I mean, you want to run the football? Okay. Run it behind at 75. That's how you're going to win games, hopefully, next year. So, I'm just glad that again this trade happened today. I think Sweat fits this defense. He's an ascending player, 85 tackles, 8 tackles for a loss. I mean, I feel pretty good about this trade. And look, this is just a massive human being. Like, if you do not put 2 bodies on him, he's going to ruin your day. And this is a guy, too, that is getting into his 3rd year in the league and was in a dysfunctional place in Tennessee last year. Now he goes to a 3-4. He goes with Dunbar, who's worked with in these kind of linemen. And I think the Jets are going to love this guy because if he gets double teamed, guess what? That's going to open up more space for Will McDonald or Arvell Reese or Bailey or whoever they have on this roster. I mean, he's going to instantly improve his run defense, but he's not a slouch at pass rush either. I mean, you look at the tape, the times where they try to do one-on-ones on him, not a good idea. The poor guard that's on him just gets abused. And look, I'll say this, like with Darren Muji, I really like the trades he's been making. And I do feel that for the first time, it feels competent. Like even with Joe Douglas, like a lot of the free agency moves he would make, you kind of go, Like he was a good trader for draft picks, but Joe Douglas wasn't a guy that was good at acquiring players ready to go or players that could impact from the NFL. So I do think that this is another good move from Muji. I think it's a move that makes a lot of sense. And look, it's one of those moves that just makes sense. If you're a Titans fan, this move makes sense. If you're a Jets fan, this move makes sense. And the other thing, I think Tony puts it perfectly. If AVT leaves the Jets, he's going to be healthy all of a sudden. You just know that's going to happen. So again, let's just keep him here. Edge at 2, receiver at 16. So I talked a little bit about this earlier, Mr. Vaughn. I definitely think edge at 2. I've also brought this up with if you really want one of the big receivers, I think you're going to have to move up a couple picks. Because the other thing I would worry about, and I brought this scenario up a couple of times, is I don't want what happened to the Jets in the Will McDonald draft, where it was clear that Broderick Jones, and again, at the time, was the last, quote, blue chip prospect in that draft. I can just see where the Jets are picking at 16. If a team is desperate for a receiver, they can jump that. If you want a receiver, you're going to have to get a little frisky. You're going to have to move up a couple spots in this draft. And especially if you want, and you look at Lemon might be the first receiver off the board. If you were to tell me Lemon was the first receiver picked, I wouldn't be surprised. But I just look, the more I've gone through this process and I look at how the boards are falling, a lot of the times by the time it gets to 16, it's like, do you reach on Boston, who again, I don't love the separation. I think there's still good value in the second rounds in terms of receivers at that point. I just look at it and say maybe the Jets have to get a little bit frisky, just because when I look at where they're picking right now at 16, like if you want to get that true player, like you might have to jump up to 14 to Baltimore or to the Rams at 13 or Dallas. I don't think Dallas would move down. I don't think Miami would have let the Jets move up to 11 since he doesn't like to move. Again, it would be a big jump to get up to Kansas City at 9. But the more I think about it, would I rather have 2 blue chips in this draft and then move back from 33 to accumulate assets? I mean, if Sonny Styles is sitting there at 9 or Caleb Downs is sitting there or even at pick 12, like if they're sitting there and they get out of the top 10, I would be doing everything I can to be trying to get up into those spots so I could walk away with one of those great players. And one of the ways you're able to do this is like what I'm saying today. The Jets filled the major hole at D tackle. Yes, they opened up the edge, but we know they're probably taking an edge at 2. I think that the Jets' biggest thing for this offseason is to plug holes so they are not desperate or at a position. And by like you re-sign AVT, you keep Breece Hall in house, so you don't have to go and get a guard. You don't have to go and get a running back. You don't have to go and get those pieces. You go out and you get a starting caliber safety or two. You go out and get two starting or a starting caliber middle linebacker. You go out and get a flexible edge. I'm not saying an every down edge, but someone that's like a third down pass rush specialist potentially. And then all of a sudden, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, we really just need a number 2 receiver. Let's go up and get. Or, you know what? We got our number 2 receiver. We have the offense pretty much settled. Let's go up and get a true impact player on this defense. We already got the edge. What if we go up and get a Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs? Like, the more I'm thinking about it, I'm more of the scenario. I'd rather have the Jets trade up from 16, even if it costs them pick 44, because in my mind, you can then turn 33 into 2 more picks on day 2. And if the Jets walk out of there, and this is the way I look at it, the Jets right now have 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. If they walk out with 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, and they were good picks, especially the first 2 were top 10 players in the draft, I'm fine with that. If they trade down from 33 to recoup the 3rd round pick, I'm fine with that. The one scenario is, well, if Ty Simpson's there at 33, that would make it a little more complicated. So again, is AD a 2 or 3? I think realistically he's a 3. I think you need to treat him as your 3. I think the hard part with Mitchell was this. You didn't really have a good quarterback. I mean, you threw him in on this team, doesn't know the playbook, is asked to basically be the team's number 1 receiver when he walks in the door. And oh, by the way, Brady Cook's going to be throwing you 95% of your passes. And oh, by the way, you're going to be in games where the script is not healthy because you're going to be throwing the football and they know you're throwing the football and you're going to be at a disadvantage. So I would pencil him in as your number 3. I would hope he has 2 upside, but you can't treat him as your number 2. I still think you need to add a legitimate number 2. And again, one way you can do that is maybe through the trade market. And the other way to address the quarterback position is through the trade. Like, I would say, if people ask me what one of my favorite options at the quarterback position would be, I would probably say, we're just getting, again, it looks like we're having a little bit of difficulties. Gotta love the Wi-Fi. So my apologies. Looks like I'm cutting it out a little bit. But I would prefer like an AJ McGee from the Eagles. And here's why. And I think he fits the Jets for what they're kind of doing. What have the Jets primarily been doing? The people they are acquiring, outside of really Harrison Phillips, because again, he's more of a veteran, but they're taking players who are under 25, 26, guys that have had experience in the NFL, guys that either aren't getting opportunities or aren't scheme fits for their teams, and taking a shot on them. And with McGee, the reason I would take a shot on him is because he's 25. He's played a little bit in the NFL, but more importantly, I think he fits the style of quarterback that Frank Reich wants. I don't think you need to put him right away, but he's someone that also has been in a winning culture. He's someone that's been in a locker room. He's someone that's gone through training camp. He's someone that's gone through practices. He's someone that's gone through all those study sessions. Like, he's understands playbooks. He understands defenses. And again, it's a very limited tape. He didn't get a lot of playing time. But I just look at it and I just think of it as, if you're going to at least patch it this season, get a guy who's at least had NFL experience or at least has knowledge of the NFL and won't be completely thrown into the fire. Because we forget this with rookies. You get drafted, then you get to minicamp, then you have to learn a whole playbook, a whole scheme. You have to go through training camp. Your mind's going 1,000 miles an hour. Like, you're trying to learn all this for the first time, and it's an overwhelming process. Why not get a guy who, again, might not have Ty Simpson's upside, but someone that's been there, done that. He's been through training camp. He's been through minicamp. He's seen how you're supposed to prepare for games. He's seen success in an offense. So I would rather do that, if I'm honest. And Abby is a fan of the 3-4. Again, good to see you, Abby, fresh from Gmail. I would say so. I've never been a big Bailey Zappi fan. And look, I saw on WFAN they were talking about Mac Jones earlier. I I don't see any scenario where they're getting Mac Jones. I mean, San Francisco, their injury luck has been horrific. You look, Mac Jones won the games last year. Do you expect Brock Purdy to stay healthy for 17 games? I don't. Like, I wouldn't be, unless some team gave you like a ridiculous offer that you're like, we can't turn this down. Like a second round pick and more. And I'm not doing that if I'm the Jets. I'm really not. I hope we can and get a third back. Well, then you don't have an edge. Then you're going to have to get more edges, Tony. I mean, I would say with McGee, I'd try to trade just draft capital, but maybe there's another player swap. Maybe there's someone on this team. And again, one player to keep an eye on, maybe Jamie Sherwood, because let's face it, who's in Philadelphia right now? Joe Douglas, who again, that was one of the big things I laughed at this offseason is, the one thing is Robert Saleh getting a coaching job this quick and Joe Douglas getting the interview. I laughed at just because the national, I just love how basically everyone in the national media forgot how bad they were at their jobs. And it was all the Jets' fault. Although, they were the ones, I don't know, that were picking the roster for 6 years in Joe Douglas's case. And Robert Saleh got 4 years coaching. But I digress. But look, I would look at McGee because, again, he's got an expiring contract. I don't think the Eagles are going to re-sign him. I also think the Eagles are in this weird spot where maybe they're looking to draft a developmental quarterback because maybe they don't love the long-term Jalen Hurts. So I think that's a possibility. But if you're the Jets, all avenues have to be open. Every avenue has to be open. And look, they added a great piece going to the third NFL season. Like, Sweat had a 79.3 run defense last season, which is the fourth highest among all defensive tackles. And that was in his second year. Now you put him in a system where you have a great defensive line coach that specializes in a 3-4. You have Harrison Phillips, who's an unbelievable teacher and an unbelievable veteran in that room. And you also have Jawan Briggs. How would you feel if you're a center and guard and you turn around and you have Jawan Briggs and you have Sweat lining up against you in the middle? That's going to be a long day. That's going to be a long day. Again, we're getting a lot of the measurements from the combine. So again, just to give you some interesting ones. So for the linebackers, because again, some of these edges are going to be in place. Arvell Reese was 6'4", 241 pounds. 32 and a half arm length. Sonny Styles, 6'5", 244. I mean, I like Caleb Downs, but Sonny Styles is there. It gets out of the top 10. Jets, go get this dude. Please, please. CJ Allen, 6'1", 230. Jake Galladay, 6'4 and a half, 240. Guy I've been keeping an eye on from Cincy. I think he could be someone. Anthony Hill, who I had mocked to the Jets, 6'2", 238. Justin Jefferson from Alabama, 6 foot 223, as a couple of them as well. Falk also had some massive measurements as well. Keldrick Falk, 6'5", 276, 34 3-inch arms. So again, a lot of measurement. Keldrick Falk's going to really, really tip the measurement scale. So again, some more of the edges. We talked Ruben Bain, third shortest arms since 1999. 30 and 7/8. Clocked in at 270 pounds at 6'3". Keldrick Falk, 6'6", 276, 34-inch arms. Romello Heights, 6'3", 239. Cassius Howe, 6'2", 253. Zion Young, 6'6", 262. Akeem Messidor, 6'3", 259, 32-inch. Messidor, again, with the length, he might be someone that goes in the top 20. So, but again, trade doesn't officially go through for the Jets till March 11th. But still, I'm just looking at this as a great deal. And look, Jermaine Johnson, you weren't sure if he was going to be there. And, I like the good unicorn emoji, Mr. Vaughn. I like that. So that's a good one. Here's the thing. The only thing I keep going back on this, Mr. Vaughn. I agree with you, but here's the problem. Do I trust Aaron Glenn? Like, if this was someone that I thought was a really good schematic. Like Rex Ryan, for example. I thought Rex Ryan's strength was schematics defensively. Like if I thought they were a brilliant tactician, I would say I agree with you. I think it'd just be a slam dunk. But the thing I worry about Aaron Glenn is, do I trust him to put Reese in the right spots? Because he's a guy that you got to move around. I think you got to, especially if you're doing 3-4, you got to hide him inside weak linebacker on a couple plays and the edge. And look, you look at the measurements too today. I mean, Reese is 241. That's a small edge. 240 is very small. Like, and I'm not saying, like, he's not an every down edge. And this was one of the things was you would prefer him being over the 250. Like, you look at Will McDonald. I mean, Will McDonald's 245. And we often criticize Will McDonald for being a bit small. And I don't think he'll be a Golston. Again, the difference is the production. I think he's an incredibly productive player. But again, I get that fear from Ohio State. Like, I really do. If you're a Jet fan, like, again, when you've been burned like that, it's trauma. So, and speaking of Vernon Golston, I'm doing a fun little video coming up right before the draft. I'm going to do the top 25 Jets draft busts over the last 25 years. And let's just say that was a very, very interesting walk down memory lane. And if you want me to do the top 25 best draft picks as well, let me know in the comments. Super chat, jump to the front of the line. Also, check out our poll, who won the trade, in our community page right now. But again, this will be a wild off season, and this is just the start. So again, the Jets with an unbelievable trade today. I think that this was a smart trade, and it's sad to see Jermaine go. I still think you're getting a great player if you're a Titans fan. I think Jermaine Johnson is an unbelievable player when he's healthy. Hopefully he's over the Achilles. I think he's going to the perfect fit. I don't think he was a great fit here. Again, still going to miss Jermaine. Unbelievable player. And again, it sucks that it didn't work out here because he was a great kid, a great leader. He's someone we've often talked about being a captain on this team. But in a way, I'm happy for him because I don't think he was going to fit. It's clear they're going to a 3-4. It's clear that he wasn't going to be fit here. And look, this is a chance for him. If he goes out and has a great season, maybe he's not with the Titans next year. I mean, he's going to the last year of his contract. Maybe then he goes to free agency and makes life-changing money for him and his family. And, that's what I'm hoping for. I don't want Jermaine Johnson to be terrible in Tennessee. I want him to have a great career. He was a great player here. I thought he was a great attitude. And look, it hurts when you see other players go other places and succeed. But I think at the same time, the Jets realize you can't be placing these square pegs in round holes. We saw it last year with this defense. It failed abysmally. They're going to a 3-4. And the buys they're bringing in, I think, will work in a 3-4. And one of the big keys to the 3-4 is you need to have that mammoth nose tackle. And it makes a bunch of sense why they got Sweat. 366 pounds, fits it like a team. Now, all of a sudden, on first down, you have Harrison Phillips as an end. You have Jawan Briggs as an end potentially. And then you have him in the middle. I mean, that's over 900 pounds, 950 pounds of humanity when you're trying to run the football. So look, it stinks, but I also said this when Aaron Glenn was hired. There's going to be changes. There always is. And it's painful changes because they will trade players you love because they don't fit the scheme. We saw it with Sauce. We've seen it with Quinnen. And now you see it with Jermaine. But look, all this, at least to how I will sum this up is very simple. Do I trust Aaron Glenn long-term? No. Do I think Darren Muji has shown me flashes that he can be a good GM? Yes. But the big thing I've hearkened for this organization, when they at the end of the season says, we have a plan, I'm like, okay, what's the plan? And of course they weren't going to tell us, but I wanted to see the plan and the blueprint. Again, I don't know what the quarterback's going to be, and that's the biggest one. But at least now I see, okay, the plan is clear. The defense will be a 3-4. They're looking at huge defensive linemen to fill space on this defensive line. They're obviously going to attack the edges in the draft, probably take 2 edges, probably one with number 2 and probably one maybe middle of the draft, maybe day 3 dart throw, probably in free agency. But at least they have a plan on defense. Where last season, even going into last year, I was kind of like going to this 4-3, 3-4. Is it going to be a lot of blitzes? Like, they never really felt like they had an identity on defense last year. And I think that was the biggest problem. At the very, 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 very least, it feels like they at least have an identity and they know what they want their identity to be. And again, it's a baby step, it's a small step, but at least it's a step in the right direction. And look, there's still a ton of moves that need to be made. There's still a lot of free agency. And I don't think this will be the last trade. I really believe that Darren Muji, with the abundance of day 3 picks, is going to look around this roster, look around the league, and try to find pieces that are under contract, that have tape in the NFL, and prove that they have a role. And look, one of the benefits that the Jets have this offseason that you don't have in a lot, you have 10 coaching changes. And I said it, that's 10 different philosophies. Look at Tennessee. They are changing their defense to be a Robert Saleh defense. And they want their guys. And there's also going to be talented players on their roster that they're going to look and say, they don't really fit anymore. Maybe there's a linebacker that was in a 3-4 defense last year that now the coach wants a 4-3, wants lighter, faster linebackers. Maybe the Jets can trade for one of those. Maybe there's a safety that they can trade for. Maybe there's a wide receiver they can trade for. I think that Darren Muji is looking at the day 3 picks, and especially after his first draft, to say, is it better to use this 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick where in the draft, I'm hoping I get someone that can stick to a 53? Or is it better to use that pick on a guy who at least I have tape in the National Football League, and I've seen that he can play in this league, or at least have a role in this league, and use that pick to acquire him, as opposed to having a dart throw and hoping that the players can work out? Because let's look at the day 3, and this was my biggest criticism last year. Day 3 last year for the Jets, it's not looking good. You might have a player that's a rotational safety. I mean, Arian Smith, maybe a gunner, special teamer, but 4th round pick, that's way too high. And then the Tyler Barron and Kiko just look like a disaster. But I do think this is a step in the right direction. I think we will see more Muji moves in the coming months, and we'll be here for all that on Rich Sports Talk. Give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest live streams. And, of course, check out our community page for fun posts. And, again, if you want to take us on the go, we are available wherever podcasts are available. And check us out at social media using the handle at Rich Sports Talk. But, again, I'm your host, Nolan Rich. Jermaine Johnson out, and T Vondre Sweat is in. So the Jets make a big trade, and this offseason is off and running. Here on Rich Sports Talk, we will see you next.